Alright, so I was out of town last week and was unable to release a video on UFC 291. So I am gonna do a quick recap of what happened at 291. Then do my picks for the UFC Fight Night this weekend. Alright, so I'm gonna start with Jake Matthews, who beat Darius Flowers pretty convincingly. He ended up winning on a second round submission, and it seemed like Flowers tapped early to the submission attempt. The commentators were saying that Jake Matthews wasn't even under the chin when Flowers started to tap. I'm trying to remember exactly what I thought going into the fights, but I'm pretty sure I would have predicted Jake Matthews to win this fight. Roman Kopylov had a brutal head kick KO to Claudio Ribeiro, and Kopylov probably had the best finish on this card. And that was after a pretty competitive first round, in my opinion, and I thought it would be a really exciting fight to watch the rest of the way. But early in the second round, Kopylov landed the head kick, where Ribeiro was pretty much out before he hit the ground, but Kopylov did end up landing a hammer fist before the ref stepped in and stopped it. Now, in this fight, I was leaning towards Kopylov to win, and planned on picking him, but the rest of UFC 291 is really where I became hit or miss on this card. Next, CJ Vergara had a unanimous decision against Vincent Salvador, who missed weight by 3 pounds. The first round was very close. I see why Salvador won it on all 3 judges' scorecards, but I personally gave CJ Vergara that round and scored it a 30-27. But Salvador, after that round, weirdly showed no intensity the rest of the fight, which was a big reason why Salvador ended up losing this fight. Now, before this fight, I was leaning towards Vergara to win. The next fight, Gabriel Bonfim quickly submitted Trevin Giles after he jumped the guillotine, and Bonfim showed very impressive jiu-jitsu in this very short fight. And in this fight, I was leaning towards Trevin Giles to win by a late round knockout. But Bonfim proved me wrong. The next fight, Kevin Holland looked great against Michael Chiesa and subbed him in just 2 minutes and 39 seconds. The reason why this is impressive is Michael Chiesa has been a highly ranked welterweight for most of his career. But Kevin Holland overwhelmed him pretty quickly and was able to get the submission. Now, what I thought was interesting is Kevin Holland said he wanted to move back up to middleweight after this fight. But I don't think it's beneficial for a fighter to keep moving between 2 different weight divisions. And I think he should stay at welterweight, seeing as he's currently on a 2-fight win streak. And yeah, I would have picked Kevin Holland to probably win in this fight. The next fight was Bobby Green submitting Tony Ferguson. Now, it's sad to see Tony Ferguson lose again, after just 3-4 years ago, him being one of the greatest lightweight fighters in the world, to now being on a 6-fight losing streak. It's tough to see the fall that Tony Ferguson has had. Now, I don't know if I actually believed it, or it's just what I wanted to happen, but I was planning on picking Tony Ferguson in this fight. The next fight, Derek Lewis KO'd Marco De Lima in just 33 seconds, in a fight that hopefully puts Derek Lewis back on track. Derek Lewis is always a fun fighter to watch, so if he is still able to fight at a top level, that could be very important for the popularity of the heavyweight division. And I was planning on picking Derek Lewis to win that fight. The next fight, Alex Pereira won a close decision against Jan Blachowicz in Pereira's light heavyweight debut. People were saying this was a robbery for Pereira, but I could easily see you giving the decision to either guy, with Pereira probably being a little more fresher and landing the better shots in the third that gave him the win, with the winner pretty much being guaranteed a title shot after Jamal Hill vacated his title earlier this year. Now, in this fight, I was planning on picking Blachowicz after seeing Blachowicz versus Adesanya, where Blachowicz used his wrestling to control most of that fight, and with Adesanya being a better wrestler than Pereira, I thought that Blachowicz would be able to use his wrestling and beat Pereira in basically the same way that Blachowicz was able to beat Izzy. Now, in the main event, Justin Gaethje avenged his earlier loss against Dustin Poirier by getting a second round head kick KO. Now, this was an exciting matchup, but I did not see the purpose of this fight when it was first announced. Even after it, I'm not sure if the win for Gaethje guarantees him a title shot. A Makhachev versus Oliveira rematch has already been announced, and even with that fight's outcome unknown, if Alexander Volkanovski wants to move up and fight for the lightweight belt again, the UFC may give it to him over Gaethje. And I've always thought the BMF title is a stupid gimmick that the UFC should stop using. But even with all that, this was a really fun event. But I'm not sure if it deserved a pay-per-view card. I personally am not happy to spend money on a card that does not have a title fight. But I don't know, that's just my opinion. I know there are a ton of people that completely disagree with me. Alright, now let's move on to my predictions for the UFC Fight Night card, Sandhagen versus Font. The first fight I'm gonna talk about will be Kyler Phillips versus Ronnie Barcelo at bantamweight. Kyler Phillips has a career record of 10-2. In his last 3 fights, he beat Song Yadong by unanimous decision. Then he lost to Roland Pavaya by majority decision. And in his last fight, he beat Marcelo Rojo by third round submission. Well, Barcelo has a career record of 17-4. In his last 3 fights, he lost to Victor Henry by unanimous decision. He beat Trevin Jones by unanimous decision. And in his last fight, he lost to Umar Nurmagomedov by first round knockout. Now, I think this will be a close fight, but I'm gonna choose Kyler Phillips by decision. The next fight will be Ignacio Bahamondes versus Ludwig Klein in the lightweight division. Bahamondes has a career record of 14-4. In his last 3 fights, he beat Roosevelt Roberts by third round knockout. Then he beat Zhu Rong by third round submission. Then he beat Trey Ogden by unanimous decision. Well, Ludwig Klein has a career record of 19-4 with 1 draw. In his last 3 fights, he beat Devontae Smith by split decision. He beat Mason Jones by unanimous decision. And in his last fight, he fought to a draw with Jai Herbert. I'm going to pick Bahamondes by second round knockout in this fight. The next fight is going to be Tanner Boser versus Alexa Kamur at light heavyweight. Tanner Boser has a career record of 20-10 with 1 draw. In his last 3 fights, he beat Ovice St. Peru by second round knockout. He lost to Rodrigo Nascimento by split decision. And in his last fight, he lost to Ian Kutalabe by first round TKO. Well, Alexa Kamur has a career record of 6-2. In his last 3 fights, He beat Justin Liedent by unanimous decision. Then he lost to William Knight by unanimous decision. And in his last fight, he lost to Nikola Nurgum Amaru. That was probably way off, the pronunciation, but lost to him by split decision. I'm gonna pick Alexa Kumar in this fight by first round knockout. The next fight will be Diego Lopez versus Gavin Tucker in the featherweight division. Diego Lopez has a career record of 21-6. And in his UFC debut, he looked pretty impressive on short notice during a loss to Mozar Evelev. While Gavin Tucker has a career record of 13-2. In his last 3 fights, he beat Justin Janis by third round submission. He beat Billy Correntino by unanimous decision. And in his last fight, he lost to Dan Ige by first round knockout. So Lopez was holding his own against a ranked fighter in his UFC debut on short notice. So because of that, I'm going to be choosing him to win this fight by decision. The next fight will be Dustin Jacoby versus Kennedy Njoku at light heavyweight. Dustin Jacoby has a career record of 18-7 with a draw, and is currently ranked 15th in the light heavyweight division. In his last 3 fights, he beat Da Wong Jung by first round knockout. He lost to Khalil Roundtree by split decision. And in his last fight, he lost to Azamat Murzakanov by unanimous decision. While Kennedy Njoku has a career record of 12-3. In his last 3 fights, he beat Carl Robertson by a third round TKO. Then he beat Ian Kutalabe by second round TKO. And in his last fight, he beat Devin Clark by second round technical submission. I'm going to be choosing Kennedy Njoku in this fight by second round knockout. The next fight will be Jessica Andrade versus Tatiana Suarez in women's strawweight. Andrade has a career record of 24-11, and she is currently ranked 5th in the strawweight division. In her last 3 fights, she beat Lauren Murphy in a pretty dominant unanimous decision. Then she lost to Erin Blanchfield by second round submission. And in her last fight, she lost to Zion Yan by first round knockout. While Tatiana Suarez has a career record of 9-0 and is currently ranked 10th. In her last 3 fights, she beat Carla Esparza by third round TKO. She beat Nina Nunes by unanimous decision. And in her last fight, she beat Montana De La Rosa by second round submission. Now, this will be a really close fight, but I think I'm going to give the edge to Tatiana Suarez and pick her by decision. The main event of this card will be Corey Sandhagen versus Rob Font. Now, originally the main event was supposed to be Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov, but Nurmagomedov pulled out of the fight a couple weeks ago, so they had to change a couple fights. Font was originally scheduled to fight Song Yadong in a couple of weeks, but he moved up and he will be fighting Corey Sandhagen this weekend. And because of the less time to prepare, the fight will not be at bantamweight. They will be fighting at a catchweight of 140. Now, as of recording this, weigh-ins have taken place, and Rob Font weighed in at 139, with Corey Sandhagen weighing in at 139.5 pounds. Even though this will be held at a catchweight, I will be using the rankings of bantamweight for this fight. So Corey Sandhagen has a career record of 16-4, and he is currently ranked 4th in bantamweight. In his last 3 fights, he lost to Piotr Yan by unanimous decision for the interim bantamweight title. Then he beat Song Yadong by doctor stoppage at the end of the 4th round. And in Sandhagen's last fight, he got one of the weirdest split decisions I have ever seen. Sandhagen arguably beat Vera 50 to 44. I personally did give Marlon Vera the 5th round, which, if I'm doing the math correct, I think would make my scoring 49-46, with the first round being a 10-8 for Sandhagen. But I don't understand how one judge gave Vera the decision 48-47. Sandhagen dominated the fight from start to finish and deserved a unanimous decision. But I guess that doesn't really matter in the long run. Sandhagen beat Vera by a split decision, which was a very dominant decision, should have been unanimous, but he still got the win. So yeah, in the end, there's really not too much to complain about in that decision. Well, Rob Font has a career record of 20-6, and he is currently ranked 7th in the bantamweight division. In his last 3 fights, he lost to Jose Aldo by unanimous decision. Then he lost to Marlon Vera by unanimous decision. And in his last fight, Rob Font beat Andre Yanez by first round TKO. And Font put together a very good combination to finish Yanez. Now, personally, this is a hard fight for me to watch, Sandhagen versus Font, as I am a big fan of both fighters. But I think Sandhagen has too much versatility, and I think that Sandhagen will be able to overwhelm Font with different looks, the same way he was able to do to Vera. And Sandhagen will eventually win the fight by a 4th round knockout. But that's just my opinion on this fight. Let me know what you think.